In Numbers chapter 35, we find the children of Israel east of the Jordan waiting for the command to cross over and occupy the land that the Lord has promised Abraham he would give his descendants. But they need to have a plan. God has spelt out in chapter 34 the boundaries of the land that they are to occupy. He has given them a specific territory, and they are not to occupy beyond that border, but they have every right to occupy within that border, from an area level with the bottom of the Dead Sea, from the Mediterranean Sea to the west, the Jordan River to the east, and way north of the Sea of Galilee in the north. And of course, 2.5 tribes already have their inheritance east of the Jordan. We note in looking at the list of the leaders that there was no territory to be given to the Levites, and that is because they would be given cities within all the territories. We continue reading Numbers chapter 35. Then the Lord spoke to Moses in the plains of Moab by the Jordan across from Jericho, saying, Command the children of Israel that they give the Levites cities to dwell in from the inheritance of their possession. And you shall also give the Levites common land around the cities. They shall have the cities to dwell in, and their common land shall be for their cattle, for their herds, and for all their animals. The common land of the cities which you will give the Levites shall extend from the wall of the city outward 1,000 cubits all around. And you shall measure outside the city on the east side 2,000 cubits, on the south side 2,000 cubits, on the west side 2,000 cubits, and on the east side 2,000 cubits. The city shall be in the middle. This shall belong to them as common land for the cities. Now among the cities which you will give to the Levites, you shall appoint 6 cities of refuge, to which a manslayer may flee. And to these you shall add 42 cities. So all the cities you will give to the Levites shall be 48. These you shall give with their common lands, and the cities that you will give shall be from the possession of the children of Israel. From the larger tribe you shall give many, from the smaller you shall give few. Each shall give some of its cities to the Levites, in proportion to the inheritance that each receives. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, When you cross the Jordan into the land of Canaan, then you shall appoint cities to be cities of refuge for you, that the manslayer who kills any person accidentally may flee there. They shall be cities of refuge for you from the avenger, that the manslayer may not die until he stands before the congregation in judgment. And in the cities which you give, you shall have 6 cities of refuge. You shall appoint 3 cities on this side of the Jordan, and 3 cities you shall appoint in the land of Canaan, which will be cities of refuge. These 6 cities shall be for refuge for the children of Israel, for the stranger, and for the sojourner among you, that anyone who kills a person accidentally may flee there. But if he strikes him with an iron implement so that he dies, he is a murderer. The murderer shall surely be put to death. And if he strikes him with a stone in the hand, by which one could die, and he does so, he is a murderer. The murderer shall surely be put to death. Or if he strikes him with a wooden hand weapon, by which one could die, and he does die, he is a murderer, and the murderer shall surely be put to death. The avenger of blood himself shall put the murderer to death. When he meets him, he shall put him to death. If he pushes him out of hatred, or while lying in wait, hurls something at him so that he dies, or in enmity he strikes him with his hand so that he dies, the one who struck him shall surely be put to death. He is a murderer. The avenger of blood shall put the murderer to death when he meets him. However, if he pushes him suddenly without enmity, or throws anything at him without lying in wait, or uses a stone by which a man could die, throwing it at him without seeing him, so that he dies, while he is not his enemy or seeking his harm, Then the congregation shall judge between the manslayer and the avenger of blood, according to these judgments. So the congregation shall deliver the manslayer from the hand of the avenger of blood, and the congregation shall return him to the city of refuge where he had fled. And he shall remain there until the death of the high priest, who was anointed with the holy oil. But if the manslayer at any time goes outside the limits of the city of refuge where he fled, and the avenger of blood finds him outside the limits of the city of refuge, and the avenger of blood kills the manslayer, he shall not be guilty of blood, because he should have remained in his city of refuge until the death of the high priest. But after the death of the high priest, the manslayer may return to the land of his possession. And these things shall be a statute of judgment for you throughout your generations in all your dwellings. Whoever kills a person, the murderer shall be put to death on the testimony of witnesses. But one witness is not sufficient testimony against a person for the death penalty. Moreover, you shall take no ransom for the life of a murderer who is guilty of death, but he shall surely be put to death. And you shall take no ransom for him who has fled to his city of refuge, that he may return to dwell in the land before the death of the high priest. So you shall not pollute the land where you are, for blood defiles the land, and no atonement can be made for the land, for the blood that is shed on it, except by the blood of him who shed it. Therefore do not defile the land which you inhabit, in the midst of which I dwell, for I, the Lord, dwell among the children of Israel. My name's Arthur, and I thank you for joining me as we share together this chapter 35 of the book of Numbers. A key part of a civilized society is a legal system which can deal with issues that arise. God's provision here was that you would have the Levites, a uniting force across all the tribes, so that the tribes do not break completely apart. In ancient times, travel was difficult, so there would not be a lot of mixing. People would spend most of their whole life living in one particular valley, and it has continued that way until quite recent times. So the first point was that there would be 48 cities which would be given to the Levites, equally distributed across the territory, so that the Levites would link the tribes together. These would be centres of commerce and trade, of education, providing a strong communication basis for the tribes. But the other tribes would be focused on the agricultural economy and live in more isolated small communities, but the cities would be dominated by the Levites. Each city was to have common land, spreading a kilometre either side of the city, so that the residents of the city could maintain their own livestock. But there would be 6 cities of refuge, 3 on the east and 3 of the west of the Jordan, which would have a particular role in relation to judgment. Here, if a person was accused of murder, he could flee there, and there would be judgment given. Either it was an accident or it was deliberate. If it was deliberate, the accuser must execute the guilty person, the accuser normally being a relative of the person who was killed, called the avenger of blood. Otherwise, the person who was charged but was not proven guilty could be safe living in the city of refuge. He was not permitted to return to his own territory until the death of the high priest, and if he left the city of refuge, he was still liable to judgment at the hand of the avenger of blood. In these cities of refuge were judges on behalf of the congregation who would determine whether a person was guilty of murder or not. But there needed to be more than the witness of one person. It was not enough for one person to stand up and say, "I saw him do it." There needed to be substantial evidence against a murderer before he could be executed for murder. But he was not free to return home because he could not be proven innocent. In this way, it was God's hope that the land not be defiled with bloodshed.